Okay, looks like we are streaming. The stream health looks a little bit iffy here, so it's what we get with internet in Down East Maine. Hopefully it will come through okay. I hope everyone's doing well and holding up okay. I wanted to take a little bit of an opportunity to publicize a class that I'll be doing on the 28th, Tuesday the 28th of July at 3 online. It's called Music Through the Ages for Schoodic Arts for All, and basically it's inspired by college music history courses, and that was always one of my favorite topics. I remember at IU there was this class called 401, which was just the numerical title of classes of that particular set of music history. It was 401 and 402. And everyone hated 401. I thought it was great. It's actually probably my favorite Jacobs class. I mean, aside from lessons and everything like that. But I got to study with the professor's name was Peter Burkholder, and he and one other professor wrote the Norton Anthology of Western Music, which is pretty much the standard textbook that everyone uses to teach music history. So a lot of the examples actually that we'll be using are from that anthology. And so what I'm going to do is kind of a preview. I'm just going to play you some of the examples and talk about them like I'm going to do for the class. And the class it's a long class. It's listed as 3 hours. And that's not the idea behind this, is not that it's going to be 3 hours of just me talking, because that would kind of get boring after a while. But I want to kind of give people the opportunity to hear larger sections of the piece. I know I did an opera class, an opera talk, but we were kind of hurried and we had to rush through. And for those of you who may have heard the opera talk, which is now, by the way, listed on the Winter Harbor Music Festival site, if you want to go back and look at it. For those of you who may have heard it, there's only one example that's going to be the same. And I've sort of purposefully steered away from talking about opera, even though I really love to talk about opera, as those of you who know me probably know. But I thought it would be good to not really listen to as much opera. I've also geared it with a little bit more examples on earlier music and more contemporary music, just because those two ends of the spectrum are kind of ignored a lot. Like, we always hear Mozart and Beethoven, but we rarely hear Carlo Gesualdo. So we'll definitely hear some Mozart and Beethoven, but we'll also hear some names that you might not be as familiar with, and some styles of music that you might not be as familiar with. I know we often think about music by composers like Henry Cowell and Schoenberg as contemporary music, which is kind of funny because it still sounds contemporary to our ears, but a lot of the Schoenberg music we listen to is about 100 years old at this point. So I did pick a little bit more recent examples. I think the most recent was like the 80s. Because honestly, I'm not as familiar with contemporary music, and that's something that some people specialize in, but that's not something that I specialize in. Okay, so the first example that's kind of a little preview example is some of the interesting earlier stuff on the spectrum, and this is one of the examples of chant, and I'm just going to play you a little bit of it. I'd like to listen to the whole thing during the actual talk, but today I just want to play you a little selection. This is an example of the introit of the Mass for Christmas Day. It's a Gregorian chant. Now, one of the things that everyone hated about this 401 class is you had to learn the specific sections of the Mass. And it's not because it was trying to be a religious class, it's just because during the time of early music, that was very important. So we had to memorize all of these things, all of the order of the Mass, which I'm not going to even go into right now, but it's one of those things that you learn for the exam and just goes out, unless you go to Catholic school, I guess. But this Mass section right here, I'm just going to play it for you. I'm not going to share the screen with this, but on Zoom I will share the screen during that. And it's interesting because it shows that type of notation. But here we go. Let's hear some of this. So I'm going to pause it right there. But you can hear it's just plain song chant. There's nothing else happening, no other decorations. Well, there are decorations, but there's no other harmonies or anything like that. But we'll talk a little bit more specifically about it in the actual class. The second thing I want to talk about is this same time period, but from a completely different angle. So one of the really important things to discuss in earlier music is sacred music, church music, versus secular music. Now, for secular music, we don't really know as much about it because during that time, the religious people in the monasteries were really the only people who could write. So a lot of secular compositions of the early medieval are lost. But this one is by a troubadour, Adam de la Halle. We do have some stuff surviving. A lot of the instrumentation of these we're not completely sure about. So they kind of just have to improvise in terms of what instruments, but they have a general idea of what would be used, but not specifically. It's not like in a Mozart symphony we know specifically what's going to be used. So you can hear some of this rendition right here. Let me pull it up. This is not it. This is the YouTube introduction. It's a little jazzy for medieval. All right, well, if you want to hear more, I hope you will join me in the class on Tuesday. I think I'm going to try to do another preview on next Sunday for one of these Pianoside chats. But I encourage you to go to Schoodic Arts for All and sign up for the Music Through the Ages class. Thanks for joining me, and